I thought a couple of minutes ahead of the starting time when I came in here that this was going to be kind of a confidential message. I didn't see very many. I was reminded about the time that the minister got up to preach and found only one parishioner in the audience and congregation, and he resolved nevertheless to go through his prepared sermon, and when he got through and hastened to the rear to shake hands with the congregation, he said, "How did you like the sermon?" And I should never ask it. And so the farmer said, "Well, I tell you, Reverend, if I was to take a load of hay out in the back pasture and find only one cow there, I wouldn't dump the whole load." So I thought maybe I should tailor the speech to the audience. But now we have quite a congregation, and not only in quantity but also in quality, I'm sure. I've learned some things today, and one thing I learned this morning was the phrase terminal beginners, which one of the speakers used inadvertently to describe the kid who is going to drop out and is already a terminal beginner. I'm going to take that back and think about it some more. I think that's sort of rang a bell for me. Terminal beginners. I was asked by Dr. Troop to present to you a message that I delivered at St. Paul last fall, and I just got to wondering how many of you are present today and were at St. Paul. Maybe I shouldn't ask that. If there's an awful lot of you, I might turn around and run. Two fine people were at St. Paul. I don't believe that I should spend the time at the beginning here talking to you about what constitutes effective learning for several reasons, not the least of which I think is that you know a good deal about, I think we all know a good deal about what constitutes effective learning. If we knew as much about how to bring it about as we know about defining it, I believe we'd be in pretty good business. Or perhaps we'd be put out of business as teacher educators. But I think we do know what it is that we're aiming to get when we talk about effective learning. We may not do so well achieving it. I'm going to take the liberty of discussing the core curriculum in reference to what I think have been classic goals over a period of years. And at least time-wise, I'm in a pretty good position to do this. It may be my only qualification, but I'm old enough to have been a core teacher in the 30s, in the period alluded to briefly by the dean. And I saw throughout those years, it seemed to me, some goals to which people who are core teachers have been dedicated. They've been achieved with varying effectiveness, but I think we were more or less agreed on, shall we call them the minimum essentials, which we sought throughout those years, and which we still seek today. Core, as you all know, comes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. You can't be defined by its title. I guess it was Humpty Dumpty that told Alice that your name says something about the shape you are, but I guess this isn't very true of the core curriculum. I don't think that various titles that it's assumed from one school to another and from one state to another tell us very much about what the core aims at. But I believe we have it in our minds and in our hearts and maybe in our viscera what those goals are. The block of time that houses the core, so to speak, the package, is an administrative device, but what goes on in that room, in that block of time, when the door is closed, this is teacher business. And I think of the core as basically an approach to teaching and learning that is within the control primarily of the teacher, as opposed to the external curriculum planners. It seems to me the heart of the core, if you want to boil it all down into one word, is method, and that the package is perhaps irrelevant except as a facilitator. Well, how do you find out what core teachers think, what core teachers seek with youngsters? Well, I think you'll watch them work, you associate with them in the classroom, out of the classroom, you read what they write, you hear what they say, and over the years in conferences such as this one here in Muncie, across the country, and over a period of years, certain kinds of goals have kept coming out. Not exclusively core goals, not the exclusive property of core teachers, but perhaps best exemplified by them. So I'm going to spell out a few of those, see whether they ring any bells. First, it seems to me that over the years we have been trying, in every way we know, to unify general education through an attack on the real problems of the individual in our society, in our culture. In this effort, we've been trying to restore the present tense to education. We've been trying to find resources wherever they are, beyond the printed page, achieving what might be called a community school. We've been trying to seek wholeness, togetherness, unity, reality, maybe I should say meaning in the learning process. Now, I repeat, these are not the exclusive property of the core teacher, but I think this is one thing we've been seeking and perhaps pioneering in reference to at the secondary level. Unifying learning around the real problems of people. Secondly, and closely related, we've been trying for a good many years to involve our kids, our students, in the planning process. In planning, in choosing among alternatives, in carrying out their plans, in evaluating their achievements themselves. We've been trying to involve our students. This process, everybody in this room knows, changes the teaching role significantly. It doesn't make the teacher less important. Indeed, I think it professionalizes the teaching role to a significant degree, but it does change it. Number three, I think we've been keenly interested in creative, critical thinking over all of the years that we've carried on as, quote, core teachers. This business of critical thinking has been high on our priority list. Our approach to evaluation of learning reflects this concern, and I think our procedures in the classroom reflect this concern. Fourth, I think we have come to regard ourselves as basic guidance workers. I should say that the core teacher thinks of herself as a guidance worker, or himself as a teacher-counselor, as the saying is now being used. We're concerned with the student's orientation. We're concerned with the guidance techniques that can be used for the study of the individual. And we're concerned with the kind of choices that kids make. We, I believe, Organizationally, the core program represents the only effective means thus far found in secondary schools for reducing the total number of counselees to some kind of manageable dimension. We strive for continuity of relationship, for a suitable combination and balance of the two elements of security and challenge. We try to keep with the same kids for more than a period and for more than a semester and for more than a year. And fifth, you might make a different list, by the way, use mine. Fifth, we aim to improve the self-concept of the youngster. We're deeply concerned with his image of himself, what the late Marie Race used to call canness, C-A-N-N-E-S-S. His progress and growth being significantly dependent on this business of canness, whether we're speaking of the academic skills or whether we're speaking of any kind of life process. We're trying to improve his image of himself. Now, if these five things are characteristics as far as our goals go, that is, unifying general education around real problems, trying to involve our students in planning and carrying out and evaluating, interest in critical thinking, interest in the guidance process and seeing ourselves as guidance workers, and aiming to improve the self-concept of the learner. Now I'm about to ask you, what does all this add up to as far as our teaching is concerned? So what is the essence of this business we call core? Where do we go from here? If this is our platform that we're operating on, what does it add up to as far as teaching? Well, I think it means a shift in our roles. I believe it's a lot easier to say what it doesn't mean than it is to say what it does. I guess you've all had that experience. But I'll make a stab at it anyway. I think it implies that we must know our kids. We must know the learner, number one. I think it involves caring for what happens to these people, knowing them and caring what happens to them. I think it involves helping them to do something about their problems. I believe it involves helping them to become responsible for their own learning, as the panel this morning at one point stressed. Knowing our students, caring about our students, helping them to do something about their problems, and also helping them eventually to become responsible for their own learning. Some of you know Jeanette Beach. She wrote a little credo for a teacher. Whether any of you have come across this or not. Jeanette's credo in part goes like this: I love people, else I would not be a teacher. My students are people, therefore I will treat them as I would my friends. As I will be interested in how they came to be what they are, I shall ask them about themselves. I will show them by my actions that I'm interested in them. We will be friends, my students and I will not change myself artificially when I'm with them. I will respect them as people, because I want to be respected as a person. I will never let them down. I think Jeanette had a piece of what I'm trying to say here when she talks about people, respect, and love. I'm talking about caring and helping. Now, what do these things imply that teaching is not? I have to ask that question because I'm going to do a little griping here this afternoon. about some things that are currently in the educational climate. You won't agree with everything I say, but I have to precede it by asking the question, what is teaching not? To me, teaching is not telling or showing. Teaching is not conveying information in packages, however fine ribbon that ties it. Teaching is not filling up empty vessels or even sieves. Teaching is not selecting and rewarding the able. Teaching is not excluding the less able. Teaching is not enforcing conformity. Teaching is not selling a bill of goods. I might almost say teaching is not motivation, because that's the interpretation we're putting on motivation, selling a bill of goods. I have to look at teaching as none of these things, but as knowing and caring and planning with people and doing with people, knowing and caring and planning and doing. And these, to me, add up to a completely different teaching role than showing and telling and excluding. Well, now, how is CORE doing in reference to these goals? I don't think I can answer this question. Each of us can answer it best for himself. In the senior high school, the CORE program is more or less washed out, practically disappeared. In our state, we had 60 high schools who attended our first CORE conference in 1960, or sent representatives to our first CORE conference in 1940, I beg your pardon. We had 60 high schools that had at least partial CORE programs. Last year, I believe we were able to identify 6 senior high schools. Grace Wright's figure on that in 1949 was 3.5%, and Nelson Boston's survey in 1956 was 6.6% in senior high schools. I would hazard a guess that there are less than there were in 1956 in the senior high schools. We have, it is true, a great many junior high schools with a block of time. And in fact, there's something called CORE. Genevieve Morger is currently doing her doctoral dissertation on a depth analysis of the Michigan Junior High School CORE program. And she has written a fairly depressing document there, study, for those who are interested in seeing not only the block of time and the administrative provision for CORE, but also something happening pretty exciting inside the block of time. Jenny hasn't found anything very exciting happening there. And indeed, the teaching methods and learning procedures are pretty conventional by and large in the Michigan State of Study. There is some evidence, in our state at least, that these programs don't even use the word CORE, and I suspect they shouldn't if we want to be classically pure. I don't believe they are classically pure CORE programs in general. Here and there are some. When I first got connected with the CORE program as a teacher and a secondary school principal in the early 30s, we were in the middle of a national period of experimentation, social experiments, questioning, teaching, trying to find better ways, trying to survive as a nation. Anything was respectable. Any kind of experiment or effort was looked upon as at least possible. And we were, in the social sciences, in government, in education too, in a period of experimentation. Older values were being questioned. And there weren't too many holes barred, HOLDS, in our effort to find better ways. It was a rather exciting period to me. I look back upon it with nostalgia, which I don't think is entirely the product of senility. I think there were some pretty good things going on and the kind of exciting sort of discoveries. In the late 50s, when the Russians beat us into space, I was over in India at the time, but we heard about it right soon because not only did we read American magazines that found their way there, but including Life, but also we got some pretty desperate letters from our colleagues in late 57 and early 58. Beginning with the Sputnik era, the culture has tended, I think, to supply the school's goals and to limit experimentation in reference to these. We've seen enormous pressure toward specialization, and I'm sure you're as aware of this as I. We have very much more emphasis on structure and continuity, beginning with the math, science, foreign language subjects, but no doubt already extending into the social studies and the language arts. We see a very much greater emphasis on separate subjects. We see a very much greater emphasis on homework, for its own sake, by the way, on the selection and rewarding of the academically talented, to use Mr. Conant's phrase, a belief in the virtue of hardness per se. I believe increased hostility toward youth. This is the theme of a recent book by my friend Earl Kelly, In Defense of Youth, which some of you might have seen. He says we don't like our kids very well anymore. Perhaps we never did. But Harold Hand, I believe, has pointed out that a good deal of this hostility is a scapegoating, a means of relieving our guilt feelings for our failure to provide funds for missile research at a time when they really were needed. We have to find a scapegoat somewhere, and the schools are a real fine one because they'll hold still. And all of this is not a very promising milieu for the core curriculum, for knowing, for caring, for helping, for doing things with youngsters, and for helping them to become more adequate people. There is experimentation, it's true. Senior high schools are experimenting, or perhaps tinkering with this and that, but I think seldom are they moving in the direction of that I have been emphasizing this afternoon, of helping youngsters to establish their own goals. I think the goals and adult values are preeminent and pretty fixed, pretty structured. Our current premises seem to be about like this. Number one, knowledges and skills are already known and can be packaged for delivery in the classroom. Number two, learning consists of memorization and drill for the most part. Number three, leadership can be learned in isolation from followers. So we're all filled as a culture in reference to education, we're filled with a sense of urgency. It should have started last year. It should have started yesterday. Let's hurry. And let's beat the Russians to the moon. And let's work, and let's have kids work, that is, not Dad. He's after a 30-hour week. He just got a 35-hour week. Now he wants a 30-hour week, but let's have the kids work hard. They're going to be our salvation. And also, let's solve the teacher shortage and save a lot of money by putting them together in larger groups so we don't need so many teachers. Now, you've already discovered I'm giving out with some value judgments. Oh, I might as well go on doing it. I'm going to talk about some things that reveal maybe prejudices are a better word of mine. I've mentioned large group instruction. This is the first thing I want to mention that we have in the saddle, so to speak. Large group instruction, which more or less makes the lecture inevitable. You know, Mr. Trump said repeatedly, well, what's wrong with that 40% large group? Supposing they do lecture, they lecture anyway. They might as well lecture to 500 as to 30. There's no magic number, and so on. Well, but I say, why make the lecture inevitable? Which it does, I think, with large groups. Reinforced with visual gadgets, which we're getting real good at, and educational television, which has been called tell and show instruction, or show and tell, and Kelly calls it intellectual crop dusting. We have, in your great state of Indiana, a couple of airplanes circling around in their turn, shooting out programs to 1,164 schools with 27 videotapes per week, 40 hours, 500,000 students. They plan 4 channels this year. I don't know whether they got around to increase the channels, and they were going to have 180 hours a week when they got the 4 channels. In the Michigan legislature, we had a bill that was shelved, but it would have provided a statewide educational television network, the purpose of which was to deliver the same history lessons and the same geography lessons, same language arts lesson, etc., you name it, at the same minute of the same day of the same week of the same year to every kid in the state. And then we were going to have a statewide testing program to make sure they all got the same learning out of the same program. I visited a large Midwestern city where one of the pioneers in the experimentation with ETV, and I saw in that school all 7th graders hearing 3 lessons 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, half a day, that is 3 periods. They had 8 monitor sets. All the 7th graders were in the auditorium watching 8 monitor sets, and they'd spend 30 out of 40 minutes in this activity, and then they'd troop back to their separate classrooms for 10 minutes, where presumably they'd get assignments and take attendance. This went on 4 days out of 5. On the 5th day, the teacher wasn't exactly idle because she had a test to give, which was concocted by the curriculum director, and which was to see whether they'd been listening all week. Now, I'm aware that research has shown that information can be thus packaged and delivered. We have plenty of research showing that if this is learning, if this is teaching, that it is efficient. There's no question, I think, but what you can temporarily memorize stuff or even develop some new insights, as shown temporarily at the time of testing by large group instruction by ETV. I know of no research which shows that you can increase your amount of knowing and caring by ETV, or that you can develop problem-solving techniques by ETV and see them work out in the solution of real problems. I see no evidence, indeed, that you can work with instead of on students by ETV. Well, so I'm a little griped at these proposals that have to do with large group instruction. It seems to me they make inevitable the very things which ought not to be done. They can be done, no question they can produce, temporarily at least, memorization or command in certain areas. Indeed, they may be a more efficient way of doing that which we hadn't ought to be doing at all. This is possible. Item 2, we're in the grip of a testing movement. Possibly the pendulum is starting to swing another way. I can't see any clear-cut evidence of it. Over 20 external testing programs of considerable magnitude operate in the secondary schools in this country. One of these gives a single test to 800,000 students, high school students, This one test takes 400,000 pupil days, and the purpose of this test, and for the most part of all the external testing, is to select and reward the talented through the use of tests for academic classification, for the awarding of scholarships for the selection of college students, particularly in prestige colleges. There are a lot of room for the kids in some colleges. This leads us directly toward a national curriculum. I think inevitably, unless we manage to break free from it. Teachers simply cannot be expected to resist this pressure, supported by almost unlimited funds. They are bound to teach for the test. In the National Secondary School Principles Bulletin titled Testing, 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 the authors warn students, even gifted students, will score well on a national test only if their program of studies is similar to the program of studies envisioned by the test makers. And I think the experience in New York State with the region supports this historically. This kind of power over the curriculum may be of concern to you in the junior high school, because external controls reinforced in this fashion tend to flow down. And I think the junior high school will really become a prep school for a prep school if this kind of pressure continues. Of course, it also has some other bad features. It rewards kids in terms of their socio-economic status, and it penalizes creative genius, rewards conformity. Torrance and others have revealed in the research on the creativity that there's only a 30% overlap between the top quartiles in IQ and creativity, and 70% miss. So item 2, I'm griping about the external testing program and the extent to which it handcuffs another kind of creativity I hope to see in schools and teaching staff. Item 3, let me talk for a little bit about team teaching. In the senior high schools, at any rate, I think the 1963 version of team teaching is designed and almost tailor-made to accentuate and perpetuate the presentation skills, or the presentation concept of teaching. So we had team teaching in the early core programs in the 30s. We had grade-level groups of teachers who planned together. We set great store by this kind of team teaching, aimed at planning together. We didn't have a hierarchy of people on those teams, and there wasn't the on-camera teacher or the head teacher or the master teacher or whatever version you want to give it. We had a group of professional people came together, and we usually chose our own chairman, and we worked together on a common goal. Well, I visited one large high school recently that was celebrated by Mr. Trump, and Pritchie's very proud. I couldn't find any obvious continuity or any evidence of relationship, such as I've been defining the core program as aimed at. I did find 3 or 4 distinct levels of teacher status, an observable hierarchy. I found in that school 2 teachers whose sole and only professional occupation all day was the preparation of transparencies for the overhead projector. Doesn't seem possible, but that's what they told me they did. One person lectured 40% of the day, and that was 40% of the kids' days. Also, teachers of lesser status supervised study halls, which they called IS, or independent study. We had that quite a long while. We'd think of calling it IS, and prepared materials, audiovisual materials, gadgets, and also they had merit rating in that school. I don't know that this is inevitably associated with this kind of team teaching, but I fear it may be. It's certainly recommended by the staff committee on staff utilization. I found no evidence of people knowing kids or caring about kids or doing things with them or planning with them are any real student responsibility. I look for the extracurricular program. You know, if you don't find it in the classroom, sometimes you find it in the clubs and the organizations. Many a mediocre school has had at least that saving grace. It had an extracurricular program that had some vitality. They didn't have any at all. It was zero. There was simply nothing. And another large school that is mentioned prominently in the Commission's publications, Commission on Staff Utilization, another of their schools of which they are most proud. The principal was in our state last summer, and he described their extracurricular program, and it takes place after 7 o'clock at night, and he proudly revealed that it involved 25% of the students last year, and nearly half of them came to an assembly once. Somebody in the audience asked him, do your teachers in your high school worry about the social values of the kids? And he said, no, we can't afford to worry about things like that. We have only one basic responsibility in our school, and that is the development of the intellectual prowess of our students. Item 4. It seems to me that the materials that have been published by the Commission on Staff Utilization, which has come to be called the Trump Plan, place a tremendous emphasis on listening, on sitting and listening. We have heard from them, and we have heard from many, many sources, that this is old-fashioned nonsense about there being a magic number of kids per teacher. We've heard this ad nauseum. They say there's no magic number. I say there is a magic number. If you start defining learning and teaching the way I'm doing it this afternoon, if you're going to know kids, if you're going to care about them, if you're going to do things with them, I say there is a magic number. I don't know what that is, but I know that you cannot do it with 400 or 200 or 100. I think there is a number beyond which you cannot know kids and care about kids and help them develop new values and help them work at the solution of real problems and grow in the process. There is a magic number. And I believe that we have to hold to that if we intend really to change the behavior of learners, if we intend education to add up to behavior change. I think we must hold. Well, in the school I visited, where the Trump Plan was in operation, they expected to accomplish this in small seminar sessions for 12 to 15 kids, which you see were made possible by having 200 or 40% of the day in large groups. 200 in groups of 200 for 40% of the day made the small seminars possible, and also the so-called IS program. But in the seminars, there was no continuity of teacher and student. They didn't have the same teacher 2 days in a row, nor 2 weeks in a row. The seminars were informally organized out of the large groups in that school. And they constituted a maximum flow and, let's say, exploratory challenge, and a minimum of security. And above all, a minimum of guidance. They were also subject-oriented, very strictly subject-oriented. This is what the seminars dealt with. They had different kids in them every day, and they had different teachers every day. Another 40% of the day is supposed to be spent in that plan in splendid isolation. In a situation where you cannot help or be helped by anyone. This has not been fully achieved. The kids insisted on cooperative activities in that school, so they put them in a study hall by way of punishment. And by the time I visited it, they were mostly in study hall. Only a few eager conformists were still out there in the IS area, the independent study area. Number 5, I'd like to say a word about programmed learning, which also promotes isolation and is our 1963 version of the workbook. I think it conceivably could promote human relationships if we could learn how to program, but nobody has yet done so. And carried to its ultimate, it seems to me as though this is aimed almost entirely at subject mastery in isolation from other humans. Excuse me. I believe it consists of prepackaged knowledges and skills predetermined by adults and wrapped up for delivery in a new and temporarily new and intriguing fashion. I don't see in this process a way in which we are helped to know people, or to care for them, or to plan with them, or to help them make choices with other people, or to do something about their plans once they're made. Well, maybe I'd better skip lightly over some others. I'm griping away about here, and for example, we have ability grouping. It came upon us like a hurricane. We didn't have it, and then all at once we had it within about 4 years. An amazing change, at least considering the rapidity of it. It's largely rejected by students of child growth and development everywhere, but it's enthusiastically embraced by teachers and principals, and apparently accepted with equanimity by parents now. It consists primarily, I think, of selecting and rewarding the academically talented in this never-ending competition for marks. A further development, carrying ability grouping one step further, is tracking the curriculum to keep certain people pure and undefiled from contact with other people. A logical further development from tracking is to differentiate the color of the diploma the kid gets so that employers and admissions officers will know that we didn't really mean to graduate him. We're saving teachers' faces with the multicolored diplomas. There is the concept of preparation for another level, as opposed to the present tense I referred to earlier. There is a diminishment, very sharp diminution in freedom and autonomy and control programmed by the professionals. I think the high schools have more than ever in their career become a farm club for the colleges, and the junior high schools for the high schools, and the elementary schools for the junior high schools. And presently we shall see a national TV home program aimed at kindergarten preparation, which will take the first 5 years of life. Of course, this is an indignity for professional people, but I think there's another reason why I object to this, and that is you can't win that way. I don't believe I very often have heard teachers praising the previous teacher their kids had last year. I seldom have heard this. I don't believe you can really win trying to get people ready for some other person at a future tense level. There is the long exploded notion that some subjects are harder than others. Dr. Conant has done a great deal to perpetuate this by his use of the phrase homework subject, and which he recommends be at the top of the totem pole, be the only ones that are used for figuring the kids' rank in graduating class, and be the ones that require 18 hours a week of homework for the academically talented. We have, I think, it firmly in mind that some subjects are better than others for mental discipline or something or other, and should be accordingly rewarded and certainly given higher place in the totem pole. I believe that we have slipped several notches back in our honesty and conviction, and the reality of our convictions about this matter of differences in subject matter. The idea of intrinsic hardness of given subject matter for all learners, which is, I just am beyond words when I contemplate how widespread this is. because nobody could have taught school for 24 hours without having learned that some kids find some subjects easy and other kids find them hard. No teacher of any experience could possibly hold such a value. Well, I think we've got to keep our eye on the central task of the teacher. He deals with the individual learner. He must accordingly know the individual learner. He must understand the individual learner. He must care about the individual learner. He helps the learner establish purposes and then satisfy them. Purposes that can be spelled out as real, present problems that are real. He helps the learner build a more adequate self-concept and to relate more effectively to other people. You see, these basic things have to be held to, thought about, repeated, and repeated, and repeated, because unless we conceptualize what it is we are after in the learning process, then we don't know what to think about the trends I've been discussing and griping about this afternoon. There are some hopeful signs in schools. I'm not, if you may have thought, and as I've been accused, I think wrongly, a pessimist. I believe there are many fine things that are going on and will perhaps continue to go on that are in harmony with our basic concept of learning and teaching. I believe that we're closer to two basic agreements that the public already has decided are valid. One, we want universal education for all kids at least age 18, and we're concerned, therefore, about the holding power of the schools, I believe properly. And secondly, we want to find success for all students in something. These are pretty important basic tenets. I hope I'm right in saying that we've moved closer to understanding and accepting them. These are the two tenets that distinguish our efforts in education from those of the Soviet Union or any other country in the world. I believe the current concern for increasing holding power in schools, which parents, lay citizens share with us, and government is now getting interested in, is a very hopeful sign. I believe the work experience emphasis is a very hopeful sign. And I believe we may be moving somewhat toward the recognition of individual differences and ceasing our vain efforts to abolish individual differences, accepting all kids as worthy citizens, providing a wide variety of learning activities and experiences, less dependence on the single basic text, more recognition of the value of achievement in other areas, in more than the so-called academic areas. I believe we're moving toward teacher or classroom-centered guidance programs, but very slowly. I believe we're restoring the present tense in education in some ways through the study of current problems, through emphasis on relationships in our culture, and perhaps we're worried at least about the tendency of our day to establish more fixators, more external structure. I believe we're at least realizing that this can happen and that it is a bad thing. I believe schools will not change in significantly good directions until teachers change them. I believe we ourselves in our classrooms and as a staff have to make these changes. I think nothing good can be done in any basic or significant way by people from outside. I think we have to know our pupils, we have to care about them, we have to help them plan and do and fulfill their own purposes. Well, I think perhaps I've talked long enough, but no meeting should adjourn in our times without some reference to the Scripture. And since I started this meeting by mentioning a sermon, I will now close by reading the Ten Commandments. These are called the Ten Commandments for the core teacher. And if you didn't learn these in Sunday school, perhaps it's because it wasn't in the King James Version. Thou shalt not diminish any of these, my creatures. Thou shalt build the spirit taller, the courage stronger. Thou shalt not be puffed up with self-importance, nor seek thine own security by acting superior to thy benighted brethren. Thou shalt not build status with thy colleagues by flunking thy students. Thou shalt not squelch the human soul, nor seek to abolish human differences, nor answer questions thy students have not yet asked, nor deprive them of their zest for knowledge. Thou shalt hold the lamp of experience high, and light the way to constant questing. Thou shalt open the door to new adventures. Thou shalt know and love thy fellow learners, and ask not in scorn the number of their birthdays. Thou shalt learn them, and care for them, and help them pursue their purposes. And seek not to know how all these things can come to pass, for thou art a core teacher. And the spirit of core is this. Thank you very much for your patience.